Welcome to BlackUSA.News Morning Show. I'm your host, William Honolulu Jr. Join us as we explore the news and opinions that impact our community. We break down how the major stories have a very personal, local, and racial impact. No topic is off limits, but even if the conversation gets rough, we're always going to keep it real. Greetings and salutations. Ooh, that's a lot. When you don't hit the right buttons on your computer, yeah, it can be problematic, and then you get all the feedback and stuff like that. That's not fun. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, to Black USA News. My name is William Honolulu Jr., and I have the privilege and honor of serving as the host of the show. Today is going to be a great day, a great show. We're going to talk about some big stuff. We're going to be talking about the Baltimore City monitoring program, a consent decree monitoring program, and how it's providing mental health services in the Black community in Baltimore. That is a really big, and I'll talk a little bit more about why we started with that one and kind of going through the consent decree, but it's a really big deal. It's a really big deal. And I'm so excited. And I told the guests, like, I know they got to go at 11, but I already talked to Donnie, and I was like, this is community engagement, mental health, and law enforcement accountability and supervision. This might go a little long today, but this might go a little long. So I just made sure that you all know what you're getting into today, because this is a really dope conversation, and it's gonna be heavy, maybe a little bit. Mental health, law enforcement, it's a big deal. February 21st, 2022, Monday. Welcome to the 21st day of Black History Month and President's Day. So for those of you all who are listening as you relax and enjoy the day not going to work, congratulations. Do something positive and something productive and enjoy yourself. Also, happy last day of National Condom Week. So if you haven't had an opportunity to celebrate National Condom Week, you probably got like another 14 hours, make some phone calls, do what you got to do. But always remember that safe sex is absolutely important in the Black community, especially because the Black community, those are statistics for a whole other show about the rise and proliferation of STIs in the Black community. But that's not this show. We're going to talk about that later. That's different. Okay. Big ups to the super producer, Kyle Crazy Horse Morgan, who always makes sure that we have what we need so that we can bring you quality guests, quality entertainment. Oh, nope. That didn't work well. This is why you have to have some backup plans. See what I'm saying? See, that's why you got to have everything waiting to pop off, because you never know when technology is not going to be your friend. So we got some technology stuff that, wasn't my friend, but now we're good. So again, big. Here we go again with this feedback. There we go. I'm gonna get it together, y'all. Y'all know it was a great weekend. I got an opportunity to hang with my mom, and you know how when I hang out with Mama Honorable, I forget everything else I'm supposed to be doing. So I will admit that and acknowledge that I got a little behind over the weekend, but I'm here now, and we're gonna make it happen. We're gonna make it work, and it's going to be awesome. Friday we had the show with Alma Brown, and that was amazing. We really got an opportunity to talk to her about her journey through entrepreneurship and healing, talking about medical care for Black women and how the development of being able to advocate for yourself, because it's rough out here for Black women who are, especially pregnancy and women's health issues. At a time, the system does not believe the pain or the struggles of Black women. And I actually had one friend who they just assumed she was trying to get drugs. She almost died, and I talked about that a little bit. So that was awesome to have that conversation, and looking forward to many more opportunities to talk about to talk about mental and physical health in the Black community. I'm sorry, because I switched things around. I want to tell you all about the sponsors, but I got to make sure I'm clicking the right button, right? Because we don't want to click the wrong button again. Like when I talk about edible arrangements, how the Govins and those kind of made you on show you this is what it actually looks like when it gets delivered to you. It is amazing. And if you notice, there were three pineapple pineapples covered with white chocolate, and it was amazing. And y'all know I love that. So again, big shout out to Brandy for having them DoorDash that to my house. um when you have issues around getting the government to make changes in your community or looking for ways to lobby and advocate, you might want to give Murphy Falcone and Murphy a call. Or if you find yourself on the wrong side of a civil case, whether someone is suing you or there's someone you need to sue, give Murphy Falcone and Murphy a call. Worst case scenario, you talk to them and they're not able to help you directly, but they can refer you to someone who can. Best case scenario, they can just transform your entire case and maybe get you the money that you deserve. Now, if you want to stay out of prison, as we're talking about law enforcement engagement, I would suggest that you give the warrior lawyer a call, J. Wendell Gordon. They don't call him the warrior lawyer just because it rhymes, but it does. They call him the warrior lawyer because he fights for his clients. And if you don't believe me saying that, I encourage you just to jump online and Google him. When you Google J. Wendell Gordon, you will find that he brings victories home for his clients. So if you have some stuff going on with criminal cases, make sure you holler at J. Wendell Gordon. Now, we are very proud to be one of the few, well, actually not even few, but one of the first Black media companies to be streaming in the metaverse. And that's all in part to our partnership with StemCityUSA.com. Dr. Tyrone Taborn and his staff over there at Career Communications do an amazing job. And actually they were actively engaged in the Black Engineer of the Year Awards this weekend. And again, just another phenomenal event. So really happy and grateful for them for all of the work that they do and how they support the Black community and BlackUSA.news. One of our newest sponsors is the book I Am Black Wall Street by Donnie Glover. Donnie takes a new look on the tragedy that happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He also identifies that Tulsa wasn't the only Black Wall Street. But the thing about his book that is different than other pieces of scholarship on the topic is that Donnie takes a look at what happened to get people to we take a look there, what happened there in the city, and how do we prevent this tragedy from happening again. But he was like, well, wait a minute. Tulsa isn't a port city. Tulsa wasn't part of the rural South. How did people get there? And in his study of how people made the transition from the rural South to Tulsa, Oklahoma, it provides kind of a blueprint of what we can do next to make sure that to follow the same type of example. So big up to I Am Black Wall Street, and very happy about him joining as a sponsor. Also, my company, The Grind, business to the next level, not just colloquially, but to really help you figure out what to do with all of the information that you get. At some point, you see one article and it says you should do this, and then you read a totally different article that says you should do the opposite. How do you know what to do? That's what we help at the Grinding Gang. We help, hey, Michael, we help you figure out what to do with all of that information and how to align your resources and what you do so that you can achieve the business goals that you have. Oh, and you know what's coming up next. You know what it is. Last but definitely not least, Darker Than Blue Grill. My God, my God, my God. Now, again, I told you all earlier I was hanging out with Mama Hana Blue, and so I didn't get an opportunity to go to Darker Than Blue this weekend. But, oh, you know how I feel about the salmon, and I appreciate you all putting me on with that Cowboy Prime Rib. I'm thinking the next time I go, I'm going to do the whole burger thing because, you know, that's cool. But I'm not sure. But the cool part is they have an amazing menu and you can't go wrong with it. Hey, Chap, good morning. Oh, Chap was actually up a little earlier this morning. He was on the line with Donnie, Zeke Way, Lou Fields, Mike Haney. They were all talking about the CIAA and how that well, it started off, let's be honest, it started off a conversation about the CIAA and how that's showing up in Baltimore. But what it ended up being was a conversation about the gaps in services for a lot of our communities. how, rec centers with schools in them or associated with schools, they're closing rec centers, they're renaming them, and and a lot of the athletes, according to Donnie and some of the panelists, were like, they're not giving back enough. And so that was a great conversation. It was like, whoa. So that was good. And if you missed that, it's online. Go ahead and check that out. But today, we have an opportunity to talk about the Baltimore consent decree. And it's really important to me about how we start this conversation off. So monitoring, they come in and provide you the context for the actual consent decree. But I want to talk about the context of law enforcement in the Black community. The Black community, historically in America, has had an antagonistic relationship. The police have had an antagonistic relationship, especially modern policing, with the Black community. We think about where modern policing finds its roots. A lot of it is in the format comes from the slave catchers in the South, the people who were deputized and authorized to ensure that Blacks who were enslaved could breathe. What law enforcement has become over time has been a tool of people who have resources to ensure that the people who don't stay in line. And so I want to be clear that that is the modern context of law enforcement. Now, there are a lot of other pretty words that we use to describe it, and there are people who fight against that and really have a different belief in the power of law enforcement or what law enforcement has to do. But let's never get it twisted. That is the anchor. That is the history. Those are the roots. And because those are the roots, that means that we have to be very careful with the tree and the vines and in many cases the weeds that grow from that root, from that seed. And one of the things that has happened is that one of the tools that we have used have been the legal challenges. When there are things that go wrong in the engagement of law enforcement and the community, we seek our redress in courts. Now, let's be honest. A lot of those courts do not address our issues. A lot of the consent decrees and I was telling our guest this today, when I first heard that Baltimore City was going to do a consent decree, I was like, okay, sure. I've seen this before. I've seen them in education. I've seen them in voting. I've seen them in law enforcement. I've seen them when, all of these things. And it was like, okay, consent decree, I'm sure. So it'll be a bunch of check marks and people doing fancy things to take photo ops and blah, 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 and it'll be cool. Fortunately for me, that is not what I have found in Baltimore. What I have found is that, especially through the community, the consent decree monitoring team, is that, and honestly, even the way that the consent decree itself is designed, it is designed to empower the community. And the reason we're starting with mental health is that I thought it was a really amazing addition that the mental health focus will be added in, not just as, hey, let's make sure that the officers are okay. That's great, that's necessary. But to think about addressing some of the challenges and the traumas that law enforcement has created in the community. And a lot of times we don't understand the trauma as true trauma, but remember working in DC with the 10-year-old boy. And we were just talking, I was trying to get some more information about him. And he was like, do you have friends? He's like, oh yeah, I have 2 best friends. And he said, well, I had 3, but one of them got shot and died. And that happens. That is not something that just happens at 10. And what was even more concerning for me is that was just a normal part of his life. What does that say about how he will grow up valuing and respecting other people's lives? Because his best friend was murdered, and it's just okay. It happens. The way that he will engage. And so again, one of the things I was really grateful for is that the consent decree. Chap says that Baltimore is not in compliance with the consent decree. Oh, this is about to get active already. All right. Cool. But and so I'm just saying, from what I've seen, so I defer to somebody else who has superior knowledge. But the cool part is that we got the people here who can answer it. And so the first guest I'm going to bring to the studio right now, I've had an opportunity to work with her in the city for years. And when I heard that she was going to be part of the consent monitoring decree, task force, and actively engaged in the community part, it actually made me feel a little better, because in the work that I've done with her, she is always, I love that part. So I'm going to bring to you all Miss Wanda Watts. Hey, Wanda.
Hi there. How are you?
How are you
Thanks
doing
for having me.
today?
I'm doing great. Doing great. You know, I'm
I'm
not
sorry. You know
early.
what?
I'm not
I got to work my technology out. Okay, here we go. How you doing today?
doing well. Thank you. And thanks for
Thank you.
having us.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. So I want you, we're going to get to Ken and Randy in a minute, but I really want you to talk about why it is important that people hear about the consent decree and understand what it is, and how it operates. And because I know you're big on this, how do we stay actively engaged and us monitor the monitors?
Absolutely. And that is the biggest part of this. The consent decree is designed to have the community be active in its formation, with all the policies and procedures. For me, it's important that, when a policy is put in place by a police department, you have to say, okay, the police department gave their input. But then I, as a community person, will take a look and say, well, that's fine on your end, but the community, we feel a different way. So how do we come together? How do we make this work for both of us? Not just one focus on the police, but what does the community want to see happen, in their community? And so one of the things I try to stress is that the community stay engaged. The policies and procedures, when they come out, there's usually about a 30-day period for input, for community input. And so once the community input is brought in, then it goes back to Judge Badar and makes a decision as to whether or not, we move forward on that. And then it comes back to the community. So for another 30 days, where they have an opportunity to give their thoughts and opinions. And honestly, the thoughts and opinions do matter, because at the end of the day, we have to live with the consent decree as community.
Right.
So we want to make sure that our thoughts and opinions get in there, and that we take every opportunity that we can to engage with the consent decree monitoring team. And we do Facebook forums once a month. We do quarterly meetings. We have neighborhood liaisons who are available every day of the week for input and discussion. And we have tried to do as much as we can to make the community aware of what's happening, but the community has to be responsive. They really do. They really do.
So we have Chap on, and we're gonna get, when Ken comes on, we're gonna address some of Chap's concerns about what's happening with the functional portions of the consent decree. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about the community engagement piece. So I appreciate the Facebook forums, and I appreciate the quarterly meetings and things like that. But is there more that we should be doing? Because one of the challenges that I have experienced with working with community when we're trying to move some legislation or whatever, is that many of them may not understand how the process works. So their expectations are unrealistic. It's, well, I told you we need to do this, so why didn't you pass a bill to do it? So how have you been able to navigate this space of getting people to understand that this is a really pressing issue for you and the city and the team, but also recognize that because of the process to get everybody's involvement, like you just talked about one policy, however long it takes them to get out, that's it, get it out on the streets. But then you just talked like another 90 days before it even becomes implemented. And so how do you communicate to the community that this isn't, this isn't a boom, it's done, but they need to stay, the dexterity to stay involved? How do you explain that? Because I have trouble.
We are actually the only consent decree that has neighborhood liaisons.
Oh, wow.
We are the only ones. And we have a liaison in each one of the districts. Um, and we are available. We have
Okay.
a website. Our website is bpdmonitor.com. B is in boy,
bpdmonitor.com.
monitor.com. And
Okay.
all the policies and procedures that are being released are on our website.
Mm-hmm.
And we know not everybody is computer savvy, but we're doing the best that we can at this point.
Absolutely.
So BPD Monitor, it has a list of all the neighborhood liaisons, how to contact us. There's also a place where each one of the policies and procedures can be reviewed online, and comments can be put in online. So you don't have to print stuff, and you don't have to see people, to
Is
make
that just real quick? Is that the right address right there? Is
bpdmonitor.com. That's it.
okay, cool. I just want to make sure that that's part of the show now.
Yes.
They can just click on this
Yes.
part or look at this part.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And you can send messages through the website,
Mm-hmm.
and one of us will answer. If it's not something that I want to answer, that I think a subject matter expert should answer, we push it up.
Cool.
And so we are the liaison. We're the eyes and ears for Judge Berdar with the Department of Justice. So the things that we hear and the things that we experience, because I myself am a citizen, and so I have interaction with police.
I'm sorry, you're a citizen. Where are you a citizen at, Wanda?
Where
are you a citizen?
I'm in Berea. I'm in Baltimore.
But that's important. And you and I talked about this before, because if you're not from Baltimore, you don't know how big a deal East Side and West Side is. I've had many businesses who come from outside of the city. One in particular, and she was like, "Oh, I'm going to set this place up, and it's going to be." And she had a small business on the East Side, and had found a new location on the West Side. And I was like, "Before you invest or sign the lease, talk to your customers." She was like, "Oh no, but because it'll be cheaper. They'll be having," and none of them came. No, 2 of them came.
Okay.
2 out of a group of about 20, 30 customers, 2 of them were willing to go across Charles Street for the services at a cheaper rate. And those are the type of things.
Right. And I grew up in East Baltimore, but I lived most of my life in West Baltimore. I went to school in West Baltimore, and I went to church in West Baltimore, but I lived in East Baltimore. But there are some people who never ever crossed that line from east to west or west to east. Nor did they come from Dundalk.
And South Baltimore, Cherry Hill. Why we go any place else other than Cherry Hill? I had people tell us, I got everything I need around here. Hospital, school, like why would I leave? And I was like, But that is why it's important to me to have somebody who is actually from here to be involved in the policy. Because a lot of times we talk about skin color and these types of things. But culture is way more, because I've learned that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And so you need to make sure.
And one of the things that I learned when I was living on Durham Street, which is near Hopkins Hospital, I have a very good friend now who is Polish. I grew up 2 blocks away from each other, but I was not allowed to go the 2 blocks to where he lived. We didn't know each other. I was not allowed to go the 2 blocks where he lived because our neighborhoods were so polarized. And now we're good friends. Friends now.
And that is the difference. And those types of stories and that type of knowledge becomes very valuable in the display and the demonstration of what needs to happen in the consent decree. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring Ken on, because Chap has brought some really good points up.
Yeah.
Ken, to give Ken opportunity.
And Ken has a full picture of everything that's going on with the consent decree in Baltimore City.
Well, let's go ahead and bring Ken on now. Ken, where you at, Ken? Okay, here we go. Here we go, Ken. How's it going, sir?
I'm good, and thank you for having me. And let me, I know we have a limited amount of time, so let me get right to the heart of it.
Let's go.
And let's talk about what the consent decree is, if you don't mind, because I think people have to understand exactly what the consent decree is. It's a court order. This is not some experiment. This is a court order that came about as a result of then Mayor Rawlings Blake inviting the Department of Justice to come into Baltimore right after the Freddie Gray uprising to figure out what the heck was going on with this police department. The department took about a year to do their investigation, and then at the end of it, and it was no surprise to those of us who grew up in the city, because I've lived in Baltimore for 70 plus years, the department found things that we already knew existed. I mean, the police were engaging in rampant illegal searches of people. They were strip searching kids on Edmondson Avenue, in many cases for no good reason at all. They were engaged in a number of excessive use of force cases. And I go back to some of the things that you said earlier, William, when you talked about, the history of this police department. And this department for many years, I remember as a young boy, and I don't want to ask too many people to scratch their heads, but there was something called the Beanie Brothers back in the 50s when a police officer was killed, and there was a black neighborhood over in Northeast Baltimore. Ivanhoe Avenue was the specific street, and essentially the police back in the 60s closed down that entire street without any probable cause. Essentially went from house to house looking for the folks who they thought were involved in these kinds of killings. So the point I'm making is that Baltimore has a horrible history with this police force, and in particular how they've interacted with the African American community. So what is the consent decree trying to do? Well, at its core, when it came into existence in 2017, and that's long before the monitoring team came on board, at the core of the consent decree is to try to rebuild some level of trust between the department and the community that it's supposed to serve. Now, one of the things that we had to recognize early on when the monitoring team came on board, after we did our initial due diligence and research, I mean, we recognized the department was totally dysfunctional and essentially had to be torn down and rebuilt from the bottom up. And that's what happened. We began our work in earnest probably in 2018, working with the Department of Justice. We helped the police department revamp its policies. It took a good year to do that. People say, what's the big deal with policies? Well, you have to have good policies before you can have what I think is the most important thing, which is good training. We spent the last, I would say 2.5 years helping this department, again, along with the Department of Justice, develop the right curriculum so that police officers could be trained to do the right thing. So I saw one of the questions early on about compliance. Well, you need to understand up front. The monitoring team, we have not, and of course it really ends up with the judge. The judge has not determined that the department or the city is in compliance with anything. I mean, that's part of what we are doing now. We needed to help this department. We had to rebuild this department, help them rebuild themselves. We had to train these officers. And now that we got new policies and all the training is in place, we started assessing, that is evaluating whether or not all the work that we've been doing the last 3.5 years, whether it's paying some dividends. And so,
so you're in the evaluation phase now.
We're in the beginning stages of
the evaluation
right now. So what happens, and this has to be all data driven, and we're not going out here just looking down the street and say, oh, that looks like that's a good job, or they look terrible. This is all data driven, all based on the records that we get. We have to develop real methodologies. I mean, we just don't walk in and guess at whether or not this department is in compliance. So we have social scientists on our team. We have other experts who are developing essentially methodologies for all of the 15 areas that are going to be evaluated. Now, it's going to take a long time to get this done. I can tell you that right now. Part of it is because the technology in Baltimore's police department was so poor.
Oh God, yeah.
It was so poor. They were operating on I think somebody said a 1985 platform when we came into the existence as the monitoring team. They finally got, I would say last year, they finally got their brand new RMS system in place. It's now able to spit out the data that we need to do the evaluations. But the bottom line is, so that everybody is clear, nobody from the monitoring team to the court has come even close to saying Baltimore is in compliance with anything. We're doing two things right now. We're requiring the department to do what we call their own self-assessments. But the monitoring team right now is, like I said, we've already developed a methodology in several areas, and we're beginning to do those evaluations now. We will probably do, I would say maybe 4, maybe 5 areas this year. Sexual assault, use of force. Let me see if I wrote a list down because I want to be accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, we have use of force, sex assault, arrest, misconduct investigations, interactions with individuals in crisis, and performance review board evaluations. Those are the areas that we expect to get to this
So,
year.
so Ken, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. Is like this engagement is you all have prioritized certain areas that the department is going to start with under the consent decree, and in other areas you're just going to have to get to those later.
Yeah, we can't. There's no way we can do all these. So, there are lots of reasons for that. One, the police department has a job to do. They have to go out and they have to protect the community. So there's no way, even if we had 2,000 people on the monitoring team to do the evaluations, there's no way we can have that department
in real time. Yeah.
So the way it's done, we try to structure in a way where we only interrupt their operations to the minimum. And we have a limited number of people. We have 21 members on the team. So, and we want to make sure that these assessments are done correctly. This is not a rush job. We want to make sure it's done scientifically and it's done based on data. So what we've done, the areas that we've picked to evaluate this year are the areas where the data is available. I mean, one of the areas that we really want to get to, which is really the heart of some of the problems between the department and the community, has to do with stop, search, and arrest. Because but the problem there is, you're talking about so much data that it's impossible for us to do that until the department had a RMS system in place that could spit out data that we could evaluate. That system is now in place, but it's going to take time to get it.
So there's a couple of things about kind of the issues around waiting for the data to happen, and one of the so let me see, I'm trying to think.
Is there.
But it's about the analysis of it. But one of the challenges, and working with understanding the need for data-driven things, because I love data, especially big data, when you can get to dive in and create algorithms and stuff like that. But one of the challenges is, while I'm doing the analysis, real life is actually happening.
Yes.
And so one of the things, and so I appreciate you talking about that. One of the things that I think might be really helpful, especially because of some of the conversations or some of the comments that Chap has made, and those I've heard those before. What is the role of the consent decree monitoring team? Because it sounds like you don't necessarily have authority over the police department. It is more of an opportunity to work with them. So the police still do their thing. You all just tell the judge what the police have done. Is that an accurate description of it?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not the way it works.
Cool. There we go. I like new information.
I said before, and I want to make this. I'm glad you asked that question because that is confusing. That's why I started out by saying the consent decree is a court order.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is the police department and the city of Baltimore are the two defendants in the case. It's just like any other lawsuit. They are the two defendants. Okay, they are obligated to comply with the consent decree because the consent decree is a court order. The judge runs this. Okay, the judge is the person that oversees this entire process. As the monitoring team, we are the judge's agent. Our job is to assist the court because there's no way one judge can look at this department on a day-to-day basis. We have experts, okay? Even though it's 21, we have some of the best experts in the country who we work with the department. We assist them along with DOJ, but we do that more on a daily basis, and we look at them on a daily basis to figure out what they're doing. When they screw up, we tell them, this is what you need to fix. We let them figure out how to fix it. But if that fix isn't correct, we then go back and say, you didn't do it right. You need to redo it. So it's not as though we just sit there and let them do what the heck they please. Oh, no. We have a daily commentary with the police. And I will say this, because I've got to be quite honest with folks. I mean, unlike most consent decrees around the country, Baltimore City, and I suspect it's because we now have a pretty good commissioner in place, this has been a pretty good process. I mean, I think Baltimore is looked upon as being probably at the forefront of consent decrees right now around the country. And it's primarily because we've had great relationships with the community. We've had great relations with the Department of Justice. We've had great relations with the city, and we've had great relations with the Baltimore Police Department, all cooperating, trying to fix this department. I think you won't find anybody in DPD saying that they don't need to be fixed. I think they agreed from day one that they needed to be fixed, and so they have cooperated as well as any department could, in making sure that they are listening to the outside folks who are giving them advice. So my point is that this judge, he runs this with a pretty tough stick. And when there are key violations, the department is told about it. And for the most part, they come into compliance. Let me just do this real quick because I know you got limited time. One of the reasons why I think this consent decree is really so good is because it's forward looking. The two areas that we're talking about today, which hopefully we'll get to with Randy, because I think you got one country, is youth intervention with police and intervention with police with people who have either behavioral disabilities or in behavioral crisis. So if you look at the consent decree recognized early on that while police do a lot of things, there's some things they shouldn't be doing because they're not trained to do it. And so there is an effort to reimagine the police, and you want to give them the necessary training so that when they run into an event on the street, because they're going to be the first ones called.
Absolutely.
And they need to learn how to de-escalate. But more importantly, is what you have identified in this consent decree is the fact that this consent decree has actually recognized that Baltimore City, the city, needs to do a much better job of providing resources for folks who have these issues, and that's being done. And so, I can spend a lot of time on this. This may be a good time to
not today. Not today. So what we can do though is that I know we have another session on Wednesday where we're going to be talking about community policing, and I think that might be more, especially with some of I love the questions that Chap has, but the questions are aligned more with community policing and that end as opposed to mental health. And I don't want to miss out the opportunity to talk about mental health, because that's one of the things we do. Hey, Chap, by the way, let me know when we're supposed to hook up, and we'll add this to our conversation so you can help me prepare for Wednesday. Oh, it's going to be awesome. I get Chap helping me. It's going to be awesome now. But what we're going to do is we're going to shift right now and move on to actually talking directly about mental health and what that looks like under the consent decree and what efforts are being addressed by BPD. And to do that, we bring on Mr. Randy DuPont. Hey, sir, how's it going?
Doing well. Thank you.
You are absolutely welcome, and thank you for joining us and helping us get a better understanding of kind of the provision of mental health from the perspective of the consent decree. So let's start with one. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role is in the consent decree or in the monitoring project or the monitoring task force.
Yeah, thanks, William. I'm a clinical psychologist and a professor at both criminology and urban studies. And I have been working with police on reform, now going back 30 years. And I'm really excited about the Baltimore consent decree because of how far reaching it is and how much it anticipated some of the developments that we're seeing now in the community. And it just has worked out very nicely. I wanted to tell you that I do think that one of the emphasis I want to take is that not only are we in the assessment phase, but we're coming out of a phase of great deal of technical assistance, rechanging of programs, developing of new policies, looking at the city and asking what kind of resources are here for public health and for public mental health. And we had a very impressive study done took a look, a very high-powered firm took a look and asked, does Baltimore have the kind of services it needs to be able to keep the police from having to serve as the last court of resort for mental health? Or does it need more services? And fortunately, we've been very fortunate in some of the timing. There really is some major commitment of resources, hard dollars, to make a big difference. So we're quite excited about it, and we're hopeful indeed. We're already seeing some preliminary data that's very encouraging. Police arrests
like
down.
what? Oh, come on, tell me about the preliminary data. I like encouraging data.
Police arrests are down. We're looking at an increase of use of community-based services such as the crisis line H2H, which is sponsored by Baltimore BHSB of Baltimore, which is the mental health agency. We're looking at a decrease in the reliance on the police and 911. I think when you move things into the community and you get community involvement such as we've had, it makes a big difference. What I'm excited about too, and you can ask Wanda about this, she's part of we have a community-based group that really sat in from the very beginning, advised us, who should we hire to do this analysis? Who's got the expertise? Who wants to be a part of this all the way through? And that kind of commitment's impressive. And what I'm seeing now is a major commitment on the part of the city. So we're at a point where it's make it or break it time, I think. and we're very excited about what the possibilities are.
Oh, we have I was just thinking about that. You talked about a lot of the hard dollars that are being allocated to these efforts. Now, what I tell what we know here on the show is that we might not keep it 100, but we'll keep it 85, because 15% you probably don't need to know about. So,
Okay.
so keeping it 85 and just really dealing with the issue outright is, we have heard as citizens and community members, I have heard a number of times about people who have given dollars or committed to do this and committed to do that. And when I walk outside, I don't see anything different. And again, like I was very upfront in the beginning, when I was concerned, another check the box organization. And to my knowledge, what I've seen of the consent decree monitoring task force, at least, it has not been that. But the reality is that, given Baltimore's history, there's no reason for us to believe you. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
There is no reason for us to believe you, because other people have come and said that before. So what's different this time?
I agree with what you're saying. And the sad news is that when they did this initial report on the gaps in the system, they identified, and I think the number was 28 individual reports they could find over the last 30 years that were trying to make a difference. And frankly, people said they just gathered dust on the shelf. So I think you're absolutely right to be concerned about that. And that is why I think what Ken's bringing up is so important. In addition to providing advice, starting new programs that are all just rolling out now, we actually have some very good baseline data. And the community developed that data measure. That data measure was implemented by the police at a good deal of cost to try to get a really up-to-date information system. But now we're getting that starting to roll. We're on our third quarterly report, and we're starting to see some pretty good stuff that's encouraging us, but also some hard stuff that's not just an opinion, but rather is the kind of data that we need in terms of what's going on with the involvement with the police. And as I said, arrests are very, very low. We're really impressed with that. Is the community mental health system able to step up and take its proper place? Or are we still having to rely on the police? The police realize that also. They're also making more calls to the community crisis lines and asking for community-based services to interface with what they're doing. And that's what I think makes a difference. If you want to break a cycle, you really can't have the police just do the same thing. You can't have the mental health system do the same thing. They've got to work together and make a transition to where we now know who's responsible for the help and support that people need to recover from their disabilities and their struggle with behavioral issues.
And so to that point, I think one of the challenges that is embedded into processes like this is that how we use vocabulary differently and how our values are different. Because each of you has talked about really great progress from the consent monitoring, from the consent decree, and the monitoring and the progress that Baltimore City Police have. But the problem is, while I understand the policy progress and the infrastructure progress, I am also living on these streets every day. And so I think some of and especially looking at Chap's comments and some of them, because Chap's comments are really focused on the infrastructure as well. But some of the challenges that, when you say there's making progress, and I just drove past a kid on the corner who was arrested, sat there, and that doesn't sound, I'm not seeing the same progress that your data is seeing. So how can you advise Wanda, or can advise the community? How do we get our minds around the fact that you are making progress? It's just that it may not look like the progress we're looking for.
Yeah, I was talking with, I think it was Wanda actually yesterday, and we were talking about the fact that until people see it on the street corner, until their encounters change, we're not going to be able to change the public opinion. And I think that's important. But I do think it is happening, and I think what I'm looking for is indeed for people to get even more involved. One thing I'm really impressed with is the way that your new administration has stepped forward. They have appointed an administrative assistant who's really got the ear of the mayor, Allie Smith. She's really reached out and gotten people involved, even at a higher level than previously, and I'm really excited about that. I think that, just in response to Chap's question, yes, I did about 12 to 13 rides myself. I have done that throughout the country, and probably, if I tell you how many, you'd think I was exaggerating, but it's a lot of police departments. And indeed, it was an important thing to get out there and see what the officers are concerned about and addressing, and to understand, too, the impact of some things on the officers that needed to change, some of the stereotypes that were unfortunately becoming embedded. And what I'm really seeing is a big change in that and the kind of realistic training that's now taking place. So there are challenges indeed, but I think you're right. Until it works its way into the street. And the unfortunate part is that relative to the encounters, which runs about 12,000 a year now in the Baltimore Police Department in crisis events, all you have to have is a couple of them, and it starts to sour things. And what we need to do is be able to
Right.
try to have a very consistent record. And the kind of attitude that I'm seeing, you'll have a very educated police force, a very motivated police force. The younger officers really want to make a difference and
Okay.
are uncomfortable with what's happened in the past. And what they're looking to do is to change things. And so when their impact is felt, which is, I think, happening, we're right now just at the point of putting out our leaders. We have a group of crisis intervention leaders that are going through a 40-hour training in addition to the 50 some odd hours that the entire force gets. And they're going to be the leaders on these events. And we're really confident that they're going to make a difference when we look at their attitudes and training and their willingness and lack of defensiveness and willingness to change. It's impressive. But again, you're right. It's got to work its way down to the street corner. Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the things you mentioned, and I want to just highlight this, you said Mayor Scott has dedicated resources to this. He did a presser with the Black media last week. And one of the things that he brought up that it never really occurred to me this way, but he is the only mayor in Baltimore's history who has had to deal with the issues of modern policing. Schaefer wasn't sat on the edge of a corner with his hands handcuffed behind him. Brandon Scott was. So these types of, and I think that may contribute to the investment because he has been traumatized by not doing anything and sat down on the corner, being pulled over or what have you. And so that invests that knowledge. And this is the kind of thing I was talking about Wanda being a part of it, having the experiences of living in Baltimore and understanding that the police are not just visitors who come in, and things like that. Like they are an integral part of the survival of our community. And when you have on one side individuals who again, like you talk about the couple of bad apples, and I want everybody, whenever anybody says the couple of bad apples, I just want them to remember how that whole phrase goes: spoils the bunch. And so if we don't deal with the bad apples, it will have a cancerous effect on the rest of it. And we need to make sure that, especially as the provision of mental health is going and these types of things, that it is designed to remediate or to alleviate some of the conditions that we've already created in the community. So let's talk what kind of mental health, what is the provision of services under the consent decree?
What's exciting about that is that one of the main hallmarks of this consent decree is, can we do things to decrease the involvement of police in crisis events and in mental health in the community and increase the social services and the community-based services that are existing? And that was really a critical element of it. We're now at the point where they have a great plan. They moved from having an analysis of the gaps, which I encourage people to read because they had 40 some odd recommendations, but moving instead to the mayor's implementation plan, which was done in cooperation with Department of Justice and with the monitoring team and others in the whole community, because they get to come in on, they actually helped develop it in the very beginning. It's a very exciting plan, and I do think we're at the point now where we're moving and we're seeing some of those things implemented. The 911 Diversion Project is now gaining steam and doing well. We're looking at major changes from the state and its funding with what's called GBRICS, and it basically is a greater Baltimore area effort that is taking place, but it will take about 2 or 3 years to implement because it's so massive in scope. Integrate services better, be able to respond and take advantage of technology. So if someone calls, they'll be hooked up with an appointment in a very short time. Those are the kind of things that we're very pleased and excited about seeing. But I think on a practical level, what we're seeing is a dramatic increase in mobile response teams from community-based services, not from the police only, but from community-based services, and their ability to jump in and really make a difference in a way that I think connects people back up. I used to run serious mental health emergency services in a major metropolitan area, the size, the same level of poverty. And what I'm always impressed with is if you can intervene and get people connected back to community services, they're not going to come back to the police. They're going to instead go to something that's supportive and make a difference in their lives. And that's what I'm really looking forward to and counting on with Baltimore, because really it's been something that the monitoring team, that Ken and Wanda have invested a lot in, that I've invested a lot in, and I'm convinced it's for real and it's not just a lot of smoke.
Okay. So we're going to make sure that it is for real. So we are now going to, because especially I know Chap is on board and Chap knows about it. We're going to be looking over data and stuff like that, primarily because we need to make sure that our listeners, our audience, and our community, what this means, because at least for this provides an opportunity for these questions to be answered. Because if they don't even get asked, if they get answered in the policy, we get lucky. And I'm tired of the largesse of others and luck being the guiding tool for empowerment in the African American community. So yeah, we need to make sure that we are also sharing the data that you have and sharing it with our audience. Now this might, whoever wants to answer this, because I want to not just talk about the mental health, but talk about the mental health in the context of what people can do. You've talked about the new services that the police department has about the de-escalation and diversion services. What does that look like? So as a concerned Baltimorean, and I think this is a big deal, and I think that you get looking at the consent decree, if it happens the way that it's written, it actually may be good. So I want to get involved. So what do I do besides bring you all to my show regularly so you can educate the rest of the world? I want to do more. What should I do?
Well, I'm going to let Wanda jump in too, but I want to add that what really you can do is be a part of our community-based advisory board that doesn't just advise. It has developed the policies. It's developed the intervention. Wow. They participate in the training and do the scenarios. What we like is that so many people have lived experiences that really bring a value. And they bring a value system that I think makes a big difference. I've always liked the strength of communities. And in Baltimore, I've seen those strengths where people really are interested in trying to make a difference in their community, and that they are bringing a value that I would call really spiritual and community-oriented values that make a big difference. So I would encourage you to get involved with CPIC, and I'm going to quickly ask Wanda if she'd like to add a comment or two, because I know she's very involved with that organization.
Yes, I am. And also, William, follow us on Facebook. We're on all social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. And through our website, you can always ask us questions. Any question you have, and you know how to pick up the phone and call me.
Well, so, okay, so maybe not me, but like other people who want to be involved.
Through our website, there is a portal there where you can ask questions, and one of us will actually answer your questions. We can direct you to your neighborhood liaison.
Okay.
We have one in each one of the districts. And there again, we have monthly meetings. We have an opportunity for you to interact with us at any time. All the policies and procedures, any of the reports, everything is laid out on our website. We're transparent. We're not hiding any information. And we feel we want you to be interactive with us. You know, people can call me. They know they can, reach out to me on Facebook. Every consent decree, every district has a page. There's so many different ways to engage with us. And we just need people to stay active with us. Not watch your show today and never come back to us.
No, so I encourage you, everybody who is on here, especially if you're on Facebook. Chap has put in a couple of links, and we'll put out the consent decree monitoring team. And you also have the link to their webpage. You have all of that stuff. One of the challenges, and whenever we bring a politician on or a government agency, one of the things that I try to make sure that our audience remembers is that it is not on you all to do. Because when we start relying on government agencies and politicians to empower us, we normally get empowered to our own impotence. And so it is really critical that as citizens, as people who are concerned, that we step in and make sure, and it will be uncomfortable sometimes, but that's part of the process.
Absolutely.
So William, can I add one other thing?
Oh, absolutely, Ken. I didn't mean to leave you behind, sir. Come on with it.
Because I think it's a great discussion. But in addition to to the monitoring team, I mean,
Oh, sit back a little bit, kid. I want to see your whole
oh,
face.
I'm sorry.
I want to see your whole face.
Okay, in addition to
You
the
look at it.
monitoring
He talking. I got to see your whole
can you
face,
see
bro.
me now? In addition to the
Yeah, I'm good now. I'm good now. I was gonna say, I was just looking at your teeth, and I was like, I don't read that.
I brushed them, man. So come on.
I am grateful for that because that could have gone the other way.
So what I was going to say, in addition to the monitoring team, the public should also engage with the Baltimore Police Department's compliance team. And I say that for this reason. One of the things that Randy mentioned briefly, and I'm just going to add to it, he talked a little bit about how the community has engaged and helped this department develop its training. And that is so important because I said it quickly when I first started, but you cannot underestimate how important it is to train police officers the right way. And you're only going to get good training if you've got a good curriculum. And the way it works in Baltimore City, and this can be done either through the monitoring team or through BPD's compliance team, but members of the public are invited not only to provide ideas in terms of what the training should look like, because look, you have to remember this, when you look at it from an academics perspective or a police officer's perspective, you're going to miss something. You need
absolutely.
The community is seeing. And so that's been one of the big reasons why from early on, we wanted the community on the ground level, giving suggestions and scenarios in terms of, look, you guys missed something. It's not just a cop. I'm talking like a community person. They're going to say, officer, it's not enough for you to see some young kid with his pants hanging down below his butt. That doesn't mean anything over in Evanston Village. Those are nice kids, man. You shouldn't that. Well, you need to deal with them in a different way. And so they provide scenarios, and those scenarios that they provide go into the curriculum, and then the officers are trained on that basis. So I mean, it's so important for the community to be involved in this because there's so much that the community can provide at a baseline level, so that the training is the way it should be. And I'll tell you this, and then I'm gonna shut up. The training in Baltimore City has been recognized nationally as some of the best training in the country.
Wait. Since the consent decree or for a long time?
No. It was terrible before the consent decree.
So okay, because I was about to say, I have to question your facts, sir, because you were bringing that is not true. I was like, that's not true, but okay.
Absolutely awful. But they have, it was the last few years, the curriculum has been recognized by national organizations as being some of the best in the country. And I'll tell you how we were, again, this is just anecdotal, but if you look back at some of the events that have happened in Baltimore, you go back to the uprising in 2020, George Floyd. Baltimore was really one. I think it may have been the only major city in the country that had they had a much better community response to what was going on. Now, it's not just the BPD. I mean,
no, right.
Go to the community, but that's part of what the consent decree is doing, is trying to bring the community and the police department together so that you can have a result that we had in 2020, so that the New York Times will say something good about Baltimore for a change, that Baltimore handled these riots better than anybody in the country.
So we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we talk about community policing, because Brandy brings up a point about the community no longer wants to engage the police in many cases. And some of this is, vicarious trauma or identity-based trauma. And I use myself as an example for identity-based trauma. My interactions with the police have never been that problematic. I've never been unlawfully detained. I have never been beaten, shot, or anything by the police. However, there's something called identity trauma. I do recognize that while I've never had those experiences, whenever I see, especially when I take my son back to school down south and I see lights flash behind me, there is this panic. Not that I've done anything, but because I know the stories, that creates this kind of idea for me where I am stressed, because I've seen, the videos I've seen, a lot of people that look like me weren't doing anything. And so that type of engagement, it creates this divisiveness among the community and the police. And power, it's difficult to trust power when power has been consistently abused or used arbitrarily. And so I think that is one of the things that is really underlying kind of the larger context of the trust relationships between the police and the community. When I was practicing criminal law, I had a police officer, my guy was looking at 5 years, minimum mandatory. The probable cause that the police officer used to pull him over was that he didn't go through a green light fast enough. That was it. And he was going to, if he had pleaded before to something else that he said he didn't do because he didn't mean jail time, and because he didn't understand what the implications of that were, he didn't realize he was looking at five years. But the judge was like, "Are you serious? Is this crazy?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's crazy." But that is one of the reasons that trust is broken, and that's one of the reasons I'm also really excited. And I know, Randy, we got caught into some other stuff, and we didn't have an opportunity to delve deeply into the mental health training that is being done for police officers. I want to talk about that, bring you back on to talk about that until behavior doesn't change. And one of the things that I also want to remind people, kind of finishing off on this, I told Donnie we're going to be late, so I'm not worried about that. But one of the things that I just want to wrap up with in talking about the need for police training, because I think a lot of times people underestimate that. We look at the police commissioner and the budgets and things. But let's be clear. There were laws in place when Freddie Gray was killed. The mayor wasn't there. President of the city council wasn't there. The police commissioner wasn't there. These leaders were not there. The people on the ground were. The people who were talking about training, they were there. And so that's why it's really important that we participate in the training that they receive, because we could say to them, hey, if a dude is acting like that, that's not a big deal, because in our culture, that's okay. In our culture, yelling when we get excited is okay. You might think it's threatening, but for me, I'm just trying to let you know what it really is. And that type of training saves lives.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm still getting worked up. So I know you all got like stuff to do and stuff like that. So if y'all need to leave, I still got a couple more things I want to say on this particular topic. Not too many, but just a couple more, because I really think it is. If you have to leave, I don't want no smoke. But if you want to stay and be part of the conversation, it shouldn't be any more than about 10 minutes or so. So it's up to you guys. But what I really want to hit home for the audience, please get involved. I grow weary. We grow weary of people complaining about how bad things are, what somebody should have done. What did you do? This morning, Donnie was criticizing elected officials and the like for the fact that the impact of the CIAA has not been felt well in the Black community. And one of the things that we were talking about is getting people, or what he was talking about is getting people the reason that they can't find anybody is because many times that the opportunities are done on their schedule. One of the things that I am very happy with the monitoring team about is the fact that if nothing else, no matter what you believe about the policies of BPD, it is an opportunity for us to be heard. And we need to take this opportunity, because guess what? If they provide the opportunity, and let's not get it twisted, this is a power dynamic, and we are not the powerful ones with the way it stands now. We have more power than we know, but we don't use it. This is how we use it. And if we don't step in now, we may not get another opportunity. Because what will happen is that people who don't have our best interests at heart said, well, we asked them, we showed them what we had. They didn't say anything against it, so now this becomes policy. And we've done that too many years in Baltimore.
William, can I add one other thing? Because
absolutely.
When you talk about community engagement, community involvement, I want you to also keep in mind, and because we hear this on occasion. I mean, there are times when community members are out in the street and they hear police officers say things that are inappropriate for one reason or another. Well, you know what? What I really want folks to do, you've heard this in terms of Homeland Security. If you see something, say something. Well, it's just, the same is true in Baltimore City. You now have the opportunity in Baltimore City, because the Public Intelligence Bureau will now take complaints anonymously. You don't have to give your name. You don't have to do anything except, you can either send a letter that you handwrite if you're worried about somebody tracing you back, saying, I saw an officer with badge number 1614 on Edding Street say the following thing. And what will happen is the monitoring team will, in all likelihood, get a chance to see it, whether you copy us or not, because part of what we do when we review the records over at PIB, we look at complaints, and we look at a lot of them complaints. And so all I'm saying to people, and I'm not looking for people to just go out and just, because, you know, a lot of police officers are doing a good job, but if you see something in the street, don't sit by and complain, oh, you know, the cop said that he can't do it because the consent decree said he couldn't do it. Well, if you hear an officer say that, I want you to report that so that we know who to go after. Maybe that officer needs some retraining, but maybe that officer needs to be removed from the force. So those are things that I want the community should be involved in this process if they expect it to work.
So let me say this then. On behalf of Donnie Glover and Black USA News, because I've heard him make this complaint several times, the intersection of Pennsylvania and North, and I've seen this myself, where people are actively selling drugs. Like that's actively happening, and we all see where they're going, and we also see 2 police cars right on that corner. And so part of this, again, talking about the trust with the community, part of the issue is that if I look at you and I watch them do what they're on, I don't trust you anymore. And so the trust doesn't just deal with what you do to me and those types of things, but it's also how I see you live day to day. And so I will jump on, and again, I'm going to follow instructions. I'm going to jump online and I'm going to send some complaints and stuff like that, because that is a very real problem. And I appreciate you reminding me that there's an opportunity for me to do something. Because a lot of times what we do is that we say it on the shows and we say it here and there and to each other and complain, but that doesn't make any changes. So that's why I'm encouraging everybody, get involved. There's a tip line, there's all of these things. And so and I'm gonna tell you this, if you come to me and you tell me about how bad things are in the city, I'm gonna ask you, what did you do? And if you don't have anything to tell me, I'm going to say fuck you and move on, because I can't curse online because, well, they don't like it. So I have to combine words. So it's like thank you, but not. Because you're not part of the solution. You're part of in my less than humble opinion. Oh, this has been amazing. Wanda, Ken, Randy, thank you all so much for being here. Like I said, I wasn't going to take too much more time, but I really needed to make sure that people understood there are ways to get involved, and we need to. Just sitting back and complaining and hoping somebody else comes and saves us, that we tried that before. We're still in where we are. Apparently I cursed, so I got a fine. Dang.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it happens. But the thing is, I just started setting that money aside every week because I know it happens. So
you didn't
all right.
That funk.
That's what I heard too, Ken.
I heard funk.
I appreciate you. Good job. So absolutely, I'm looking back. I know, Randy, I don't think I'm going to see you on Wednesday for the community policing conversation, but hey, feel free to drop through. The more the merrier. So thank you all very much, very, very much for not just being here today, but for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. Appreciate you doing this and giving it the kind of attention it needs. We appreciate it.
No problem. You guys have a great day, and I'll see some of you on Wednesday.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, man. We did it again, y'all. We got to the end of the show. Great conversations. Great call to action. It's just great. Big ups to Chap, Brandy, Michael Randolph, Shonda, me, and Michael for just being here, keeping the conversation going. And Chap, make sure that we connect so I can be prepared with more effective questions on the community policing piece, because the stuff that you are bringing up fits well within that space. Hard time, but like I told y'all, if y'all don't see me tomorrow, it's because I got in trouble. It's whatever. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. As always, I have had an amazing, amazing, amazing time, and I hope you did too. I hope you learned something, and I hope that we have found an opportunity to impact our community more and to be engaged. We can't rely on other people to come and save us. It's our turn to do it. All right, tomorrow is Sharita O'Neill, and we will talk about dealing with her book and also how she works to empower alumni of the foster care system. So we will be back tomorrow.